Ugh, and I brush my hair too. This looks awful, I know. Don't mind me. Alright. These numbers, as mentioned, are not scientific. One doesn't normally pull in groups unless sheer peer pressure influenced the results. I pulled males and females, but for good technical reasons. Most birth intentions, it quotes that for some reason, data are derived from female-only sample. Both the informal sample and the census data concern whites only, not all Americans. Beyond that, recent studies of intentions or wanted children or children expected or ideal family size data, even when executed scientifically, are almost invariably flawed. The number of children actually born usually turns out to be less than the number intended or wanted. After all, some women who want children never marry, some can't conceive, some get involved in careers and decide to have either no children or fewer children than they originally expected. Still, while my very rough results from Linden do not match these precision births intentions data in the US today, they do offer a clear flavor of directions of what's happening in America. You can only imagine flavor is like a dog whistle or something, just based on the demographics that this dude is throwing out. Okay. Based on what's happening in America and in other modern industrial nations of the world. For example, consider the Gallup poll data regarding the ideal family size. In 1945, as World War II ended, the percent of Americans saying they believed that having 4 or more children was the ideal family size was 47%. Turning the clock ahead in 1959, it was about the same, 45%. And then suddenly, change. By 1985, only 11% told Gallup pollsters that 4 more children were ideal. At the same time, those saying that 2 children were ideal went from 16% to 1959 to almost 60% in 1985. The thumbnail Linden survey also conforms with the general direction of recent census data, showing lifetime births expected, which are now about the lowest level we've ever seen, and have been at such low levels for about a decade. These data will be discussed later in this volume. But it's not just intentions data or ideal family size data. It's just Linden, Gallup, and the Census Bureau. All these are only reflections of something that is happening in the modern industrial world that has never happened before. Authors love to be able to say such and such has never happened before in history. But friends, beware, it usually isn't true. This time it is. What's happening today has never happened before. It will dramatically change the U.S. and the world in which we live. No one knows with certainty what the full nature, extent, or impact of these changes will be, but there is more than enough data, far more precise than the show of hands in Linden, the Gallup poll, or the census intentions data, for highly informed speculation. Of only one thing is there certainty: stark change is ahead. And of change itself, we know one thing: the earlier we know of its projected arrival, the better we can try to ameliorate it, shape it, adjust to it, or even try to reverse it. Over the years, in a variety of circumstances, I have heard businessmen, diplomats, government planners, and parents all begging wisely for the same thing. No surprises, please. In one sense, this speculative book is an attempt to deal with that plaint. Forewarned is forearmed. Jeez. What is happening is this. For about a decade and a half now, the people in the nations are free, modern, industrial world that includes us in the USA have not born enough children to produce themselves over an extended period of time. We had a baby boom, now there is a birth dearth. Um, and hardly anyone is paying attention, certainly not in the US after all. In the first generation of such a baby bust, there is only a shortfall of babies, not of adults. And even some of that is smoothed out if the baby bust happens to follow a baby boom, as has happened here. This is so because there are so many potential parents around from the previous boom that even if they each have very small families, it can still add up to quite a few children, although a smaller number than in the boom years. But as we enter the second generation of the birth dearth, which is just upon us, the shortfall is just not in babies, but in young adults as well. The earlier, quote, missing babies become, quote, missing producers, consumers, soldiers, sailors, mothers, and fathers. And then, assuming only that fertility rates remain at that current level, the next generation of babies, the small families of these smaller numbers of maturing birth dearth babies start shrinking. That too will likely be with us within a few years, and all this family size change, of course, reflects itself sooner or later in actual population numbers. The nation affected by birth dearth move inexorably from high growth rates to low growth rates to no growth rates to negative growth rates that are already apparent in some of the Western Europe nations. My own view is that this remarkable development, this birth dearth, will hurt us in the United States, and it will hurt people from other nations around the Western modern world. This may prove to be so in a dramatic and absolute sense when we experience noticeable harm in either a personal, economic, geopolitical, or social sense. But I believe it will most surely be so in the sense that even if things seem alright, we would have been much better off if the birth dearth were not proceeding in this way at the same time. At this time. I believe the birth dearth will in the future begin to cause turbulence at every level of our economy, from the counters of fast food restaurants to major corporate boardrooms. Modern capitalism has always been rooted in the economic fact of rigorously expanded domestic markets. That phase is ending. The ensuing turbulence will be difficult, though not impossible, to deal with. Ours, after all, is a responsible and flexible economy. Responsive. I guess that's the same idea. Indeed, the coming effect of the birth dearth may well provide great economic opportunity for some. Invest in mortuaries, nursing homes, geriatric hospitals, and pharmaceutical companies, but not in companies that manufacture baby food, tricycles, or little league uniforms, and not in a suburban 4-bedroom housing developments. Still, on balance, the birth dearth will provide hard to deal with. That is true in the United States, but doubly true in the nations of Western Europe and in Japan, our major trading partners. Birth rates there have generally fallen to lower rates than in the U.S., in some cases starkly lower, and immigration is not regarded as even a semi-serious solution. The Western Europeans have particularly enormous problems coming at them, and if they do, then we do. After all, as we hear every day, this is an interdependent world.